Another amazing character transition produced by the Holy Spirit is the transition from weakness of character to endurance. From weakness of character to endurance. And at least in part, that's described in James 1, verse 4.
And let endurance have its full effect, so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing.
So, Van, in a moment, I'll talk a little bit more about the way that the Bible defines endurance. But what's on the flip side of endurance, particularly before we became Christians? How would you explain the opposite of endurance?
I would say the opposite of endurance is buckling under pressure and running away. My first thought, as an example, has to do with marriage and parenting. And now I'm still learning. I've only been married for 4 years and I've been a parent for 2 years. But I think that so many men leave their wives and so many people leave their marriages because family life has a way of exposing our selfish character. And instead of dealing with it, people choose to run away from it. And again, it just exposes our weakness of character.
That's exactly what happens. And yet, by the grace of God and by the power of the Holy Spirit, we learn to remain under pressure. It doesn't mean that we don't struggle, and it doesn't mean that we're not filled with moments at times of sadness and struggle and sleepless nights. But instead of running away, instead of buckling under the pressure, we go back to God Himself and we go back to our God-given responsibilities. And we re-engage with our spouses. We re-engage at our jobs. We re-engage with our children. And instead of running away from our churches, we go back to the very people that God has placed in our lives. So those are just some of the ways that we remain under the pressures of life and demonstrate that God is more than sufficient to help us to endure to the very end of our lives.